Hey, thanks for checking out Nuts and Bolts with Tone, and welcome to my channel. Today I have a 2011 I think it's a F250 6.7 Powerstroke, and this one came in with the complaint of no brakes. It has no power assist, and it has a check engine light on. Well, the 6.7 Powerstroke uses a vacuum pump that's run off of the front of the engine. It actually notches into the gear for the high pressure fuel pump. And this produces vacuum for a traditional vacuum brake booster. So I'm going to show you how to replace that vacuum pump. Vacuum pump on this one wasn't producing any vacuum. You actually will probably be replacing it because it's leaking. They're very common to leak. The gasket, the bolts loosen up, the gaskets leak, the gasket leaks, and then it dumps oil all down the front of the engine and makes a big giant mess. So this one's dry as a bone, just not pumping. So let's get started. Let me show you how to do this vacuum pump. First step getting started here, we need to get this intake air tube out. But to do that, we have to unclip all the hoses that attach to it. Just unclip them, pop them out. Be careful, these are plastic tees. Go ahead and disconnect that coolant hose right there. This hose is very prominent to break. I broke one time by literally just leaning on it and it broke. Must have been brittle and ready to break. But anyways, just disconnect it and let's get it out of the way. And you're going to have a vacuum pump connection right there. You're going to depress the two tabs and it pops right out. And then disconnect that clamp and we'll be able to swing it out of the way. The procedure says to remove this whole upper fan shroud. We're not going to do that. I'm going to show you how to do it without doing that. So we got that vacuum line disconnected there. We got one more right here that goes to the vacuum pump. Let me see. Yesterday I did it one-handed. Let's see. And boom, got it, one-handed. All right, and now we're able to just flip this out of the way. Now, before you take the belt off, we need to break the fan clutch nut loose. It's right down there. So the easiest way to do it, and the way I do it, is you got 1 7/8 inches. Got this pneumatic fan clutch tool. You're going to use an air hammer and put this in there. 6.0, 6.4, 6.7, all the same adapter right there. And you're going to use this to break the fan clutch loose. So next step is to disconnect the connector for the fan clutch. We're not going to disconnect that connector. We're going to disconnect that one that's kind of under the belt. It's attached to a bracket that's run in by that bolt right there in through the fan bracket. That bolt is a 13 millimeter. You'll need to take that bolt out and disconnect the connector in order to get this fan clutch off of this fan bracket. And then we're actually just going to set it down and tuck it up in the front, up into the fan shroud, and not take it out. So you'll see right there, I've got the fan clutch up in the front, just leaning towards the radiator, tipped away from the engine, and the bracket is down there for the connector. So the next step is to remove the belt, and you're going to have a belt tensioner, which is right there, that silver thing right there. And you're going to be turning that clockwise towards the driver's side to release the tension to get the belt off. So I'm using the brand new Capri Tools extra long soft grip ratchets to get this off. I've got a 1/2 to 3/8 adapter down at the bottom where it goes into the tensioner. It's just easier with this really long ratchet for the leverage to get the belt off. So you're going to push it to the driver's side, push it that way, and you're going to slip your belt off. Just make sure you have enough room for the swing back of the ratchet. So the fan bracket has 5 bolts holding it on. You have a top one there, and then you have one that's underneath the tensioner. So there's 2 on the passenger side. And then you got 3 on this side. You have the top one, you have that bottom one down there, and the middle one's out because of the fan clutch. So once you get that unbolted, you got to get it out. Let me see if I can do this one-handed. It's kind of big, kind of awkward. You're fighting this hose over here for the secondary cooling system. Trying to get it out one-handed here. Hold the camera. I'm trying to give you a good view. And boom, it's out. Hopefully it wasn't out of frame. Next up is the vacuum pump. Got to disconnect the hose. So you got this hose right here. This is where the EGR and the turbo wastegate connect to the vacuum system. So you got to disconnect it there, or you can disconnect it at the vacuum pump. Just make sure you get your clamp back exactly where it was. You have to disconnect it at the vacuum pump anyways. So if you can do that, that might be easier. You're going to have 4 8mm bolts right there. Usually when you pull this off, it's because you're replacing this gasket. Here's what I do when I mark a hose. I mark the clamp and the hose, so that way when I put the clamp back on, all I have to do is line up the paint marker. There's no question as to is the hose and the clamp in the right spot. It sucks trying to guess, and then you don't want to have a leak. It's just easier this way. So on the ears of the vacuum pump gasket, you can see where there's pieces of material missing. That material is on the engine. You'll have to scrape that off with a razor blade. So this right here, this is what goes into the gear of the high pressure pump. And that's how the vacuum pump runs it. You just want to take your new one and orient it close to how this one is. It can move, it can wiggle, it can turn. It's not a big deal. And you're going to need to swap your hose over. Disconnect it there. Don't forget. Just be careful because those little nipples, they like to break off. Maybe use a little pick and break the connection. And then you can spin it. So you'll see the front of the engine. There's pieces of gasket material that are on the ears. And then you'll also want to use some Scotch-Brite pad to get the seal of the timing cover clean. The bolts on the front of the vacuum pump, they're 89 inch-pounds. You really want to make sure you torque them because these bolts, they come loose. And then, like I said, this gasket leaks and it makes a mess. And you want to make sure that you really get this timing cover clean. You can see now I got it pretty clean, but when I first glanced at it, it looked clean, but it was covered with a layer of grime that would have just leaked. I got some little furries I got to get off from the rag, but you want to make sure you get this really clean because if you don't, it's going to leak. You're going to have a mess. And you'll be doing it twice. So here's the setup that I use. I got about a 2.5 inch, 1/4 inch extension and a magnetic socket by Cenex Tools, 8mm. I use this to get the bolts in and out, that way I don't have to hang on to them. When you put your vacuum pump in, if it doesn't pop right into the gear of the high pressure pump, you just have to rotate it a little bit. It's not too bad. It's kind of like a distributor on a Honda. You just got to get it turned just right so it lines up. And then loosely put your bolts in, and then 89 inch-pounds. So here's the 5 bolts for the fan bearing assembly. They're all the same length. I know it doesn't look like it by the way I'm holding it. I'm trying to do it one-handed while holding the camera. And the head of the bolts keep getting stuck on each other. So there we go. Setting them down, you can see they're pretty close to the same length. So this fan bearing assembly, it has on the back side, it has 2 notches that stick out of the fan assembly. And then there's a recessed notch in the timing cover where it lines up. You need to make sure that the fan assembly seats all the way up against the timing cover before tightening it, or it'll be cockeyed. When you're taking your fan bearing assembly in and out, be careful of this exhaust gas temp sensor. It kind of hangs down and in the way. You can really just yank the wires right out. After you put your vacuum pump in, don't forget to connect this vacuum connection here. Just be real careful of that nipple. And I find getting it off, you can twist this with a pair of needle nose pliers and get it to break the seal. Next step, put the belt back on. Here's a picture of what the belt looks like. You can pause it right there. Once you get your belt on, you're going to go ahead and get this fan clutch on. The fan clutch is going to be a little tricky because it's heavy. And make sure that the part with the connector goes through here so you don't break it. And then you got to put that 13 back in there when you're all done. And this fan bracket, I forgot, I haven't done one of these in a minute. It has 2 notches that sit inside the timing cover, so you can't put this bracket in wrong. The notch is there, and then down in the bottom driver's corner, it has a recess that sits inside the timing cover to keep it from cockeying. So we're gonna go ahead and get this fan clutch in. Don't forget to connect that vacuum line. I already told you that. Pretty critical because it would suck to forget that. Once you put the fan clutch in, don't forget to connect this vacuum line. It's a lot easier now than it is once you put it all back together. And don't get so busy. You're going to be at home probably, so you're not going to have 5 million things going on. When I put this bracket on, I was so busy with all the other work I have that I didn't think about the connector for the fan clutch. It's down below the fan brackets, and I have to take the belt back off and take the bracket off. And, well, and take the fan clutch off. And get the harness out. After you get your intake air tube on, you want to clip all your hoses into their respective positions so they don't get broken. And then start it up. You should have vacuum brake assist, and you also should have no oil leak. After watching this, should feel pretty confident to get in there and get this vacuum pump done. It's not incredibly difficult. Getting the fan clutch off is probably the hardest part, and just really knowing how to get in there. So, thanks for watching. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. You get notified of all my future content, which you definitely don't want to miss. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.